Thank you so much for joining us today for Maggie's story time. We haven't had her for very long, but she has become a very important and very much loved member of our family, and I really just wanted to share her story with you so you guys could see the progress she's made and what she's had to go through so far. So going back to where it all started, we adopted Maggie from an animal shelter on September 21st. We went the first night to go just to look. We didn't really have any specific dogs in mind or anything. We just figured we would know the one when we saw them. And it was love at first sight with Maggie, so we couldn't get her that night but because they were closing soon, but we came back the next day and got her first thing in the morning. While I was signing all the paperwork, they were saying how she was such a good girl, healthy. They mentioned healthy a couple times. And then as we were on our way out the door, they mentioned, oh, they think she might be getting kennel cough and that she hadn't been eating. So, you know, we brought her home and almost immediately she started coughing. So my mom brought her back the next day to get the antibiotics for kennel cough. Or Bordetella. So a couple of days went by, she just progressively was getting worse and more lethargic and just seemed sad. Those of you who have animals or kids know that, like, you can just look in their eyes, you can just tell that they don't feel good. I'll insert some pictures so you can see what I mean, because you can tell she was just sad and did not feel good. She was also getting a lot of nasal discharge too, and it was wet and it would almost like immediately like start to crust up on her nose. So she was just obviously not the picture of health. She was sick. We asked them, they said that, you know, because she wasn't eating, she didn't want to drink, she wasn't going poop, like anything. Which we figured she wasn't pooping because she wasn't eating, and that was really concerning to us. So when we contacted them and asked, they said it was because we weren't walking her enough and we weren't giving her the exercise she needed, which bothered us because, you know, you can tell she's sick, and, you know, we were taking her for walks, but she was getting so tired and coughing so much, and we didn't want to push it, but we were definitely still taking her for her walks. Shortly after that, there's one night my mom and I were sitting up with her, and she got really bad. She looked horrible and she was struggling to breathe. So we rushed her to an urgent care clinic, the closest one we could find, and $1,200 later they did some x-rays and showed them to us and revealed that she had very, very serious, very bad case of aspirated pneumonia. So that is not something that was caused by kennel cough. They said their best guess with how bad it was and that she had been sitting like that for a while would have been that maybe when they had spayed her, which was like roughly a week before, that when they removed the tube, she aspirated on her vomit, like she breathed in her own puke, which they said is something that happens, but it's just important that you catch it and you do something about it as soon as it happened. So their recommendation at urgent care was to have her hospitalized because of the extent of her aspirated pneumonia. They did say that we could try the antibiotics for a little bit longer and see if that helps her, because they also gave us Entice, which was an appetite stimulant. A little while later, we brought her to a regular vet, and when they saw her, and looked at her x-rays and the paperwork and things that we had, they recommended also immediate hospitalization. And they said that they didn't have the resources to really be able to help her. So my mom and I did take her to an animal hospital in Tampa, and they also recommended at least a 24 to 48 hour hospitalization as well. So this was also wonderfully coinciding with Hurricane Ian, so there was a lot going on and tensions were high down there, and I can't really say I blame them, but I do think that they were trying to hurry up and get us in and out because of the hurricane, because they weren't really sure if they were going to lose power, how bad it was going to be, things like that. Maggie has come back to join us. We have her on one of the cables tied to a tree so she can kind of roam the yard and play. So she's coming back for us. So at the animal hospital, she wasn't really showing any improvement, but they still sent her home at the 24-hour mark, even though she was supposed to stay the 48 hours. So a couple days after that, still not showing any improvement. If anything, she keeps losing more and more weight, and it was beyond concerning, and we just didn't know what to do anymore. So I made a list front and back of like 3 sheets of paper and called every vet that we could in the area to try to find if anyone could help us, if they had any suggestions, or if they could do some IV antibiotics, maybe a different kind, because clearly these weren't working. The animal hospital that we had went to called back, and they said that because she wasn't showing improvement still, they were very concerned and said that might have to consider the alternatives, which were not a good outcome. So I called around a couple more places, and we ended up taking her to Planned Parenthood, and they were the only ones that would help. So they ended up being really amazing, and I dropped her off every day on the way to work. They were doing IV antibiotics and fluids because she had a really bad fever, and so when she broke her fever and she was getting a lot more energy and she was eating on her own, and you know, like, she started being willing to like be hand fed, and then some of the things she was eating just by herself, they decided they wanted to see how her body did on its own with the antibiotics, and that is what you see here. So that happened very recently, and trust me, she has way more energy and way more spunk than she did before. The food is kind of like an everyday battle. We have tried absolutely every human thing that we could think of, like pumpkin, boiled chicken, white rice, meat, liverwurst, just like baby foods, everything that we can think of and that has been recommended to us. Tried it 10 times over. Obviously she still has a long road ahead of her, and it's, you know, she's not completely better yet, but we're so relieved with the energy and, like I said, the willingness to eat. And, you know, the first time she pooped, I think we almost cried. It was sad. So I'll insert some clips of her being, you know, silly, goofy, and running around, just so you guys can share in the joy of her medical advancements. And we will give you an update, because we're taking her back in a couple of weeks for x-rays and some follow-up care, and we'll let you guys know how it's going, but fingers crossed that everything is improving. Thank you so much for watching Maggie's story, and stay tuned for her updates and for more appearances by Maggie, as well as some fall adventures coming up soon.